Good morning everyone, how are you all today? This is Ashar Khan from Shiv Jyoti Educational Group Kota, and students, today we are revising our full course of SST class 9th, which is coming in your upcoming exam. Students, here are the chapters which are coming in your exam. That is chapter 1 of Geography, India, Size and Location. Chapter number 2 of Geography, which is Physical Features of India. Chapter 1 of Economics, that is the story of village Palampur. Chapter 2 of Economics, People as Resource. Chapter 2 of Civics, what is democracy, why democracy, and lastly there is chapter 3 of History, which is Nazism and the rise of Hitler. So let us go through these chapters again. If you have any doubts, we have our doubt classes which you can attend, where I'll solve your queries. So let us begin with India, size and location. Okay students, in this chapter students, we learnt about India's geographical location, that where India lies on the world map. We know that India lies in the southward extension of the Asia continent. Okay, then we learnt about the Indian Standard Time and the different latitudes and longitudes which passes through India. Then also we learnt about the neighboring country of India, which are our neighbor, land neighbors as well as sea neighbors. Let us discuss this on the maps now. So students, first let us discuss what is Tropic of Cancer. Tropic of Cancer is a latitude which divides India into two equal halves, that is the northern part and the southern part. So anything, the area which lies above the Tropic of Cancer is northern India and the below one is called the southern India. Okay students. Now another important longitude which passes through India is the Indian Standard Meridian. Why is it important? Because of this longitude, which is 82.5 degree east, we calculate the standard time of India, which is followed throughout our country. Our country is so large that ideally we should have two time zones, but because it will create a lot of confusion, we have only one time zone, and which is calculated by 82.5 degree east longitude. Okay students? Okay. Moving on, this is the northernmost point of India, which connects the southernmost point as well as the westernmost point in Gujarat to the easternmost point in the Arunachal Pradesh. Okay. Moving on to our next map. Now let's locate the India's neighbors. Okay, the neighboring countries of India. Again, look here at the board. You should know where each country lies. So student, the first country which is India's land neighbor here is Pakistan. Then we have Afghanistan. Okay. Then there is China here. Right below China is a small country, Bhutan and Nepal. Okay. As we move on, there is Myanmar and Bangladesh. So India has 7 land neighbors. Okay students. Apart from the countries which share land boundaries with India, we also have island neighboring countries, that is Sri Lanka and Maldives. Okay, they lie in the Indian Ocean south. Okay, so these are the two island neighbors we have, India and Sri Lanka, and the 7 land neighbors that we have, which is Pakistan, Afghanistan, China, Nepal, Bhutan, Myanmar and Bangladesh. Moving on, let's move on to our next chapter, which is chapter number 2 of Geography, Physical Features of India. Students, in this chapter you learnt about the physical features, means different kind of landforms which you will see in India, right? First, that was the Himalaya mountains. Second, the northern plains. Third, the Peninsula Plateau, the Indian desert, the coastal plains, and lastly the islands. Now let us discuss this on the map. So students, now let us mark the 6 physical features of India on the map. First, let's start from the top. Let's mark the mountains, which is the Himalaya mountain. Okay. Now the Himalaya mountains start from here and they pass all the way to Arunachal Pradesh. The Himalaya mountains are divided into 3 lines, which is Himadri, Himachal and Shivalik ranges. Okay. So our first is the Himalayan mountains. Now, number 2, we have our northern plains. The northern plains starts right at below the Himalayas, which is also the most densely populated area of India. Okay, these are the northern plains, where they are divided into 3 systems which are categorized by rivers. The first part is called the Punjab plain, second the Ganga plain, and the last one we have, that is the Brahmaputra plain. Okay. Now, let's move on to the third point, which is the Peninsula Plateau. Students, you see this triangular area which is jutting out into the Indian Ocean. This is our Peninsula Plateau. This area, the triangle area. Okay, the area here is called Chota Nagpur Plateau. This here is the Malwa Plateau, right? And this here is our Deccan Plateau. Together these 3 makes the Peninsula Plateau. Now, let's discuss our desert. Now, the desert area here, okay, they start from the Aravalli Hills, that is the desert area, number 4th point. Then we have our coastal plains. The coastal plains are right here, the plains which is in contact with the water. Okay, these are the coastal plains. And lastly, we have our islands, the 6th point, which is Andaman and Nicobar Island and the Lakshadweep Island group. So students, these were the 6 physiographic divisions of India. You can also see this map in your book and notice where each particular physical feature is marked. Now, let's move on to our next chapter, that is economics chapter number 1, the story of village Palampur. Children, if you would remember, the story of village Palampur was about a model village of Palampur, in which we learned how the daily life of a village goes through. In this chapter we learned that the main activity of Palampur, means the activity in which most people are engaged in, is farming. Okay, people of Palampur are also engaged in other non-farming activities as well. Then we learned about electricity in Palampur, that when finally electricity arrived in Palampur, what happened? Okay, do you remember that electricity transformed the way the village was run, irrigation facilities especially. Earlier, the facilities, irrigation which was dependent on rain and canals. Now, because of electricity, tube wells can pump out water. Okay. Then the modern implements. Earlier, there were old tools which were used in farming. Okay. Now, modern implements were being used which increased the production. Then multiple cropping, we also learnt about it. What was multiple cropping? See, multiple cropping is when you grow multiple crops on the same piece of land in a year. Then we learnt about the Green Revolution, which were some changes, okay, done in India after independence, the way we used to farm our crops. Okay, we started using HYV seeds, fertilizers, insecticides, pesticides, and a lot of water was given. Okay, that increased the production of India's crops, and that was called the Green Revolution. Chapter number 2, which was people as resource of economics. People as resource. What is people as resource? We learned that the population of a country, the way they work, is called a resource, which are the people. Okay, means what is a resource? I already told you in our earlier videos as well कि anything which you can use, जो भी चीज आप इस्तेमाल कर सकते हो, that is called a resource. Okay. So how are people as resource? कि जो people है, citizen है, देश की population है, वो resource कैसे होते हैं? By their working abilities, okay, by their skills. Then we learnt about birth rate, death rate and infant mortality rate. I hope you remember what these are. Birth rate is the number of people born in a particular area in a particular time, okay, per 1000 people. Death rate is the number of people who die in an area at a particular period of time per 1000 people. And what was infant mortality rate? Number of babies who die before completing the age of 1 year. Okay. Then we learnt about quality of population. Okay, I gave you an example of Japan. The Japan does not have any resources. Okay, there are no natural resources in Japan, very less. But still Japan is one of the developed countries in the world. Why is it so? Because Japan has invested heavily in their population, in their workforce, by implementing good rules and facilities in education and health. When people of a country are educated, they have good health, that means they can work through their maximum potential. Okay, that is the quality of population, which depends on education and health. Next, we learnt about unemployment. What is unemployment? It is a state when one person wants to work but cannot find work at the available wages. Let कि उसको वर्क तो करना है बट उसको नौकरी मिल नहीं रही, हम उसको क्या बोलते हैं? उस टर्म को अनएम्प्लॉयमेंट. We learned about 3 types of unemployment in this chapter. Okay, seasonal unemployment, disguised unemployment, and educated unemployment. Please, if you don't remember, attend our live doubt classes where I'll explain this again thoroughly, as well as you can watch the earlier videos which we have sent. Moving on to chapter number 2 of civics, that was what is democracy, why democracy. I hope you remember this chapter. What did we learn about in this chapter first? What is democracy? The definition: a form of government in which people elect their leaders. We learnt about this, right? Then we learnt about the model of modern democracy, means different countries who were said to be democratic but they were not. We learnt about first about Pakistan, where General Musharraf seized power because of his military control, right? So there were elections in Pakistan, but the final decisions were being taken by General Pervez Musharraf and his cabinet. In a democracy, we say that the final decision-making power must rest with those who are elected by the people, but it was not being followed, right? Then we learnt about Mexico. In Mexico, the party PRI, which is Institutional Revolutionary Party of Mexico, what were they doing? They were using some dirty tricks to win elections. Okay, in a democratic setup, the election must be free and fair, but PRI was winning until the year 2000. Okay. Then we learnt about Zimbabwe, where the people of the country were democratic. They elected their government after getting independence, but they could not protest against it. They could not criticize the government, which is also wrong, because in a democratic setup, you are free to criticize the government, to point out their mistakes so that the government can correct it. Because the government in a democratic government is accountable to the people of the country. Okay, I hope you all remember this. Merits of democracy, we learned about the advantages of having democracy, that it is good, people are respected in a democracy, we have power to elect leaders, governments listens to us. These were some of the merits of democracy. Then we also give demerits of democracy. When we learn about something, we learn it from both aspects, positive as well as negative. So first we learnt about merits, then we learnt about demerits, that in a democratic setup, decision which are made by the people takes a lot of time, because a lot of people are consulted. Politicians who want to contest election do not care about people sometimes, they only care about winning. Okay, उसके लिए वो कुछ भी करने को तैयार होते हैं. They often resort to unfair means. Okay, so these are some demerits of democracy as well. Then finally we debated that why democracy is better setup. So what conclusion did we reach? Students, we saw both merits and demerits. We learnt about the other countries who were said to be democratic but they were not. Finally we decided that democracy is better than the other options we have, like monarchy, dictatorship, anarchy, right? That we are not saying that democracy is perfect, but it is better than the other options. Okay? And our last chapter was of history, which is chapter number 3, Nazism and the rise of Hitler. It is one of the very interesting chapter we have. In this chapter we learnt about the world wars, which was the First World War and the Second World War. The First World War lasted from 1914 to 18 and the Second World War lasted from 1939 to 1945. We learnt about them and how it affected Germany. After the First World War, Germany's economic condition was very weak. They were forced to sign the Treaty of Versailles, by which they were supposed to give their territories, their resources and a huge war compensation to other countries, the Allied forces, right, which humiliated Germany. Germany's power, economic became very weak, the people became very hopeless, and that gave the rise to Hitler's power. Okay, because of Germany's condition, which was very weak, people were losing hope in their government. Hitler rose to power. Hitler came forward as a messiah, as a savior, and promised a good future to the people, to the German nation, whose pride and dignity was shattered. And what happened? People listened to him and they joined his party, which was called the Nazi Party. And what happened? The entire Germany was changed. It was called Nazi Germany. It was a Germany based on propaganda and Hitler's lies, through which he followed his Hitler's aggressive policy. His aggressive policy, what was that? That I must attack other countries so that I can join them in Germany. हिटलर की पॉलिसी क्या थी? वो किस बात में मानता था? एक्सपेंशन. That Germany's area must be expanded so that more resource can be poured back, so that the German people can live a good and happy life. That was Hitler's idea. But his idea, his worldview was racial. He only believed that the German people whose skin was fair, whose hair were golden and eyes were blue and green, only they were supposed to be live. Okay, they were called Aryans, superior race, perfect race. And the people who belong to other communities like Jews, Gypsies, Blacks, Russians, Poles, even the Germans who were physically or mentally handicapped, he hated them all. And what did he do? He started to kill them in gas chambers, at concentration camps in different parts of Germany. Okay? And that was called the Holocaust. उस part को हम क्या बोलते हैं? Holocaust. When Hitler followed his policy against Jews and other communities. Okay, the entire time where people were tortured, taken away from their home, their businesses destroyed, and they were forced to live in a small area called ghetto. And ultimately, when they were very weak, finally at the end stage of their life, they were killed using poisonous gases. Okay, उस time को हम क्या बोलते हैं? The Holocaust. So student, this was it for our entire revision of the SST syllabus. I hope you all went through it. If you have any doubts, please attend our live doubt class where I'll explain your queries. Okay, thank you.